You know, it's an interesting archetype when it consists of this sideman bird that looks straight out of a Disney film, and his only offensive prowess is just kicking over little pink babies with his feet. And then in the same archetype, you got the walking trapezist muscle. My man's got no shirt. He's the only one in the archetype that wears no shirt. He's got no shirt. Alright everyone, welcome back to another episode of By the Box. Today we're going to be going over Valiant Souls and Visions of Ice. Jumping right into Valiant Souls, in Grey Trunade there is not a thing here that will be very common for this new category. However, in Gold Sphere we have a good amount for once. So starting out in Gold Sphere, I'm going to go over what has been one of the greatest staples in the history of the game. And that card is going to be Paleozoic Canadia. Or Canadia, whatever. So Paleozoic Canadia is a normal trap card that has the effect to target a monster that your opponent controls, and you change it into face down defense position. And then while it's in the graveyard on a once per chain effect, when a trap card is activated, you can special summon this card as a normal monster. It's level 2, it's Agua, water type, 1200 attack, and it is no longer treated as a trap card. If it was summoned this way, it's immune to monster effects. However, it does get banished when it leaves the field. So yeah, this card came out well before Book of Moon. Now obviously it's less versatile and it's slower than Book of Moon, making it objectively not as good of a card, but in general this card has been phenomenal in so many decks throughout the history of this game ever since it came out. I mean, the thing about flipping an opponent's monster face down, why that effect is so good and why it's so valuable, is just because of how well and efficiently it can disrupt your opponent. And of course the card can be used as protection during the battle phase, of course, but predominantly it's just disrupting your opponent during their combos. So the most constant example that I give over the last format anyway has been Harpy Channeler. If Harpy Channeler gets flipped face down uninterrupted, then that can usually win you the game against Harpies. And there are plenty of other examples like Deep Sea Diva for Water Exceed. There's just a lot of cards that you will want to flip face down to disrupt your opponent, and then this card will always be good for that. And of course can protect you in the battle phase, and it can do that in more ways than one, because of course when you activate another trap card, if he's in your graveyard, you can special summon him as a monster, and that effect is predominantly used as a defensive thing. Some decks have found ways to turn the tokens that the Paleozoic monsters become into advantage for extra deck plays or what have you, but typically it's summoning them in defense mode that you can sort of defend with them. So it can disrupt, it can protect, it's live when it's in the graveyard. It's been played in so many decks, and as of right now it is the second most popular trap card in the game. Very solid, you could realistically run it in any deck. Paleozoic Canadia is a phenomenal card. And to note just real quick, Paleozoic Canadia is not available in any other way besides this box, except it does have a bundle deal. Continuing in Gold Sphere, I got another 2-for-1 for you guys, another bundle deal, and that's going to be Masked Hero Anki and then Mask Change. So Masked Hero Anki was the boss monster of hero decks for a long time, and he's still considered the boss monster of Destiny heroes unless you sort of count Dreadmaster. But even then he sees play in different hero builds, and that's the thing. There's quite a few different builds of hero decks that go around right now, and whether or not Anki sees play is depending on the build, but he sees a considerable amount of play and has ever since he came out. Anki is a level 8 Dark Fusion monster. He's warrior with 2800 attack, and he must be special summoned with Mask Change. And so he can attack your opponent directly, but then the battle damage your opponent takes is halved when he does. But then if he destroys a monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, you can add a change quick play spell card from your deck to your hand. It's a hard once per turn on that effect, and why that's so good will make sense when I go over Mask Change. So obviously he doesn't have any protection and he doesn't have any direct disruption. He's actually just a beat stick. He can get through to your opponent for 1400, or he can beat over a monster at 2800 attack, and then that brings me to the quick play spell card that is definitely better than Masked Hero Anki overall as a card, and that's Mask Change. So Mask Change is a quick play spell card that has the effect to target any hero monster you control. You send it to the graveyard, and after that, if it left the field by the effect, you can special summon a Masked Hero monster from your extra deck with the same attribute. So this being a quick play spell card gives it so much versatility, and also the fact that it can target any hero monster. See, the best hero card cards are the ones that can work on basically any hero, because that's a lot actually, because there's vision heroes, there's masked heroes, elemental heroes, destiny heroes, and a few other ones that I'm not even thinking about. Hero is such a vast and expansive archetype, and cards that are restricted to one portion of the hero archetypes is, you know, it's a little more situational, but Mass Change being able to send any hero monster to special summon predominantly masked hero Anki, it's nuts. So typically in basic hero decks, you'll see this card paired with Destiny Hero Malicious or Vision Hero Vion, because they are both dark attribute, and then they can summon Anki directly from the extra deck. Now, this card is also used to bring out Masked Hero Blast by tributing Stratos instead. It being a quick play spell card means you can use it during the battle phase. So you might see where I'm going with this. If you attack with a dark hero monster during your battle phase and you have Mask Change in your hand, you can then activate Mask Change and send that monster to the graveyard and special summon Masked Hero Anki. Masked Hero Anki at 2800 attack can beat over something your opponent controls and then search another Mask Change. Because Mask Change does not have a hard once per turn, you can use your second Mask Change on your Anki to summon another Anki, and at that point it's very likely that your opponent's field is clear and 2800 attack points will finish the game right then and there. Yeah, this little combo has been nasty in the past, and it's just a straight OTK if it goes uninterrupted. And it's more than just that these days. Like in Destiny Heroes, they use this same OTK method as kind of their bite back when they get Dreadmaster on the field, and oftentimes it is their path to victory, and of course Destiny Heroes have been a pretty good deck as of late. But again, the hero decks, they're underrated, they can compete more than you would think, and just overall, like if we ever get like Masked Hero Darklaw or something dumb like that, then Mask Change will continue to be great. And to note about Masked Hero Anki, so he is only available in Selection Box Volume 2. However, Mask Change is also available in the Evil Domination structure deck as well as the Hero Generation structure deck. I would say the Evil Domination one is better, and those structure decks are probably a better way to go get Mask Change, but that's actually kind of debatable, because this is probably the best main box I've talked about so far, and going for a copy of Mask Change will also put you on the path to getting an Anki, which of course Anki doesn't come in those structure decks for some reason. But then of course you could pick up a copy of Paleozoic Canadia or some of the other cards that I'm going to talk about. So honestly, this box really isn't half bad if you're going for Mask Change. However, the more efficient and reliable method to get them would be the structure deck. So continuing in Gold Sphere, I've got one more, and that is another generic trap card in Needle Sealing. Needle Sealing has a simple effect: when there are 4 or more monsters on the field, you destroy all face-up monsters. So of course, when you combine your opponent's field and your field, you have 6 monster zones. So if 4 of them are occupied, then this card is live. Now, normally the situational aspect of this card would probably make it dwindle in power level. However, the way it's used in certain decks makes it more consistent. So typically what you're looking for with this is to control 1 monster and your opponent controls 3, and then you nuke their field. However, some decks also can make use of destroying their own monsters and then also your opponent's, because it's just 4 or more, so it could destroy up to 6 realistically. But another thing about this card that is so good is it does not target. So I remember I main decked this in Resonators for a while when Resonators were sort of at their peak, and a little deck named Lunalite was a very, very oppressive rogue deck at the time, because their boss monster, Lunalite Saw Answer, could get up to 3600 attack points and could not be targeted by card effects, and that rules out the majority of removal in the game, including Paleozoic Canadia as an example. Just anything that targets. But Needle Sealing, on the other hand, was my out to Lunalite Saw Answers when I ran Resonators, because they didn't run anything else that didn't target before Volcanic Queen came out. So yeah, untargetable monsters or monsters that gain effects when they're targeted with stuff, then Needle Sealing just bypasses all of that. Now, it is not a pure staple. However, it has seen a widespread amount of play in a ton of different decks, including recently. It sees play. It's really, really good. Of course, it does depend on the deck, but the fact that it's been so good in so many different decks, that's what puts it into Gold Sphere for sure. And the only other way to obtain Needle Sealing is Selection Box Volume 4, which is the one with Book of Moon. So moving down to Silver Wall, I have a few cards here as well, and I'm going to be starting out with the normal spell card, Dark World Dealings. Dark World Dealings is a very simple normal spell card. Each player draws a card and then they discard a card. It's designed to fit with Dark Lord's whole thing about how they can activate their effects when they need to be discarded by a card effect, and it's just because of these really nightmarish rulings where basically a card that says you discard a card to draw a card would not activate a Dark World effect just because the effect of the card isn't to discard, it's the cost. So a card like this is interesting because the cost of this card is both players drawing a card, and then the effect is both of them discarding. Now, I've talked about consistency in drawing and why that's so good, but this card it's a little weird with that, because while your opponent is staying card neutral, you're going -1 because you're losing the Dark World dealings in your hand, and then you're drawing a card that replaces the Dark World dealings, but then you have to discard one, so you're going -1, whereas your opponent is just staying card neutral. And then of course you're helping your opponent cycle through their deck and even set up their graveyard, so it is a very risky card. It does make it very situational in the decks it's run. However, of course, recently widespread play in one of my favorite decks in Infernities. Infernities recently started to run this card more than something like Into the Void, just because it was a little more consistent and also helped set up the graveyard by sending Infernity Archfiend to the graveyard that you can then bring back with Infernity Launcher to start the Infernity combo. And it also has seen recent play in Tech Genesis, and of course in its own archetype, which you don't see all that often because it's an absurdly expensive deck, but it's very good in Dark World as well. This is one of those cards that what's keeping it in Silver Wall is recent success in good rogue decks. Tech Genesis bordering on the meta for sure. Now granted, it is a tech option in Tech Genesis, however, the fact that it's seeing play in 2 decks like that, and also the future-proof nature of the card, I think it can see play in decks in the future depending on what we get. Though being an ultra rare in this box, it is obtainable in one other way, and that is Selection Box Volume 1, so this one's a bit of a pain in the ass. So continuing in Silver Wall, this time I got something a little special for you guys, I can't find it. Next up in Silver Wall, we have the rare Stygian Dirge. I love this card. So Stygian Dirge is a continuous trap card that just reduces the levels of all monsters your opponent controls by 1. I remember recommending this card in the, basically a video that I made for the upcoming KC Cup. And I had a guy that, like, after it, he said, I was able to get to stage 2 because of Stygian Dirge because you recommended it to me. And that warmed my heart. And so I'm here to spread the word. So the thing that prevents this card from being a staple in every single deck is it's not going to shut down every single deck, and also not every deck wants to run a continuous trap card. However, this is one of the best anti-meta cards and a premier side deck card in tournament format. I mean, just think about it like this. Your opponent controls Harpy Channeler and Harpy Perfumer. They both go down to level 3. They can't synchro or exceed summon anymore. And then you basically just win. And like, it goes for everything. Like even Magnet Warriors, you could say, because they're all going to go down to level 2, and then there's no Gorgonic Guardian shenanigans or Water Exceed once again. Like they use Territory of the Sharks, and you chain this and they become level 3. Now granted, they could still go into Nightmare Shark, but man, it's still just GG. So then the other problem with this card is, of course, it's vulnerable. You know, it sits on the field with no protection, 1 Mystical Space Typhoon, and it's gone. But however, you can still win from this card if it's only active for 1 turn. Usually, you really just need 1 turn of this card shutting down your opponent. Such a good card, it's underrated, it's in Silver Wall because yeah, it can't be run in everything, but like if you happen to have this card and you are missing, you know, certain aspects of your deck, like this is always an option to consider. It's such a good counter to so many decks. And it's not like running Poisonous Winds where that card is, you know, way too situational to main deck. Stygian Dirge, it's like, I would say 10% of the time, like at most, you'll be going against a deck that this won't hurt. More often than not, this card's gonna be great for you. So continuing in Silver Wall, I have a super rare, and it is the quick play spell card, Double Cyclone. Double Cyclone has the effect to target a spell and trap card that you control and one that your opponent controls, and you destroy them both. So, you know, this card is prioritized over Mystical Space Typhoon in decks that like having some of their spell and traps destroyed. So as an example, and probably the most common one as of late, is Noble Knights. Noble Knights enjoy destroying their own spells and trap cards because they can just activate them again. And then once they're equipped to a new Noble Knight, those Noble Knights can proc certain effects, or you can reuse the effects of some of the Noble Knight equipped spells. Like there's one that destroys a set card that has a name that is way too hard to pronounce, but it starts with an A, so you guys can tell me, but I'll show a picture of it because I know the artwork's cool, I just don't know how to pronounce it. And then there's also Caliburn, who gives you 500 life points. So Double Cyclone is really good in Noble Knights, however, they do prioritize Parallel Twister over it. But when you don't have Parallel Twister, it's a great card, but it still sees play in Destiny Hero as well, because Destiny Hero can destroy their own Clock Tower Prison and also a spell and trap that your opponent controls, and they don't have to be super reliant on maybe the one MST that they got from the skill. And Abyss Actors, who also love having their spell and trap cards destroyed, they run this card too. And of course, Abyss Actors are really good right now. And then Evil Eye as well, they enjoy this card. Like Pareidolia, the field spell, has a good floating effect, and so it sees a fair amount of play across a good amount of decks. So what's keeping it in Silver Wall, even despite the fact that it's seen play in 2 recent meta decks, is it's kind of a tech. So like I said, like Destiny Heroes, I mean, they run this card, just not all that often. A lot of the time, they're very content with just using Mystical Space Typhoon. And like Abyss Actors, again, they run this card, just not always. And I did say about Noble Knights, like, they love this card, but they like Parallel Twister a lot more, and by extension, Double Cyclone actually doesn't see a tremendous amount of play in Noble Knights. So yeah, there's just like better versions of it, and yeah, it mostly just is a tech, but what it's teched into are really good decks that it does very efficient things for, so I think Silver Wall's a good placement for it. Double Cyclone is available in 2 other ways, Selection Box Volume 1, and then the Ancient Gear Awakening Structure deck, which in my opinion would be the best way to get this card. Because like, yeah, Ancient Gears like ain't shit anymore, but it's still a fun deck to play, and you get the majority of it from the structure deck. So you ask me, that's the better way, but again, this box is pretty good. And that's gonna do it for Silver Wall. So yeah, I mean, you know, all this stuff is good. And moving down to Bronze Weapon, I've got 2 more cards to talk about. So, and that's something I've realized. I'm just gonna say this real quick. These Buy the Box episodes are gonna get very, very long, just because I'm gonna be talking about more and more cards. But we're going to a normal card that isn't obtainable in any other box, but it's extremely easy to pull from this one, and it's one that I just adore, and that is Paleozoic Marmella. Paleozoic Marmella has the effect to send a trap card from your deck to your graveyard on a normal trap, and then he has the same exact effect as Paleozoic Canadia, where once per chain he special summons himself from the graveyard as a level 2 token that is unaffected by monster effects but is banished when it leaves the field. So I've talked about Foolish Burial before, and how sending cards directly from the deck to the graveyard is a really good effect. It just doesn't apply with everything, and most trap cards you don't want to be throwing in the graveyard. However, if there are any that you do, then Marmella is a phenomenal card. As of recently, it's been seeing play in Tech Genis and Pure Dinosaur decks, and the Tech Genis decks are using a Miscellaneous Saurus engine, and basically they use this with Survival's End that can destroy cards on the field from the graveyard, and this is also one of the cards that helps thin that deck, so they're able to run even 30 card variants because of cards like this. And by extension, I mean, it's one of the best cards in the deck, because Survival's End, getting that in the graveyard, is so optimal for those decks, and this card can just do it for you on its activation. And then it's not just dead in the graveyard either. It's a very good card and is potentially future-proofed if we get other trap cards that enjoy being in the graveyard. And moving on, this is my last card for this box and the last one in Bronze Weapon, and that's going to be Amazoness Onslaught. Amazoness Onslaught is probably the best Amazoness card in the game. It's a continuous trap card on a once per turn during the battle phase. You can special summon an Amazoness monster from your hand, and then it gains 500 attack until the end phase, even if it leaves the field. And after damage calculation, if an Amazoness monster you controlled battled an opponent's monster while it was face up in the spell and trap card zone, you can banish that opponent's monster. And then if it's on the field, destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can target an Amazoness monster in your graveyard and special summon it. So at one point, Amazoness was the best deck in this game, and this card was the biggest reason why, because just banishing in those days of Duel Links was so rare, and for this card to do it kind of seamlessly and do it for a whole archetype was a bit overpowered. And then like, even if you got rid of it, it brought an Amazoness monster back, like Amazoness Queen, for example. I mean, the whole deck is actually kind of centered around this card. It's kind of the centerpiece. It's a beat down deck that really relies on Amazoness Onslaught, if I'm being honest. The card was restricted for a very long time, recently got its restrictions lifted, and has hasn't seen all that much play. Amazonas, you'll see them from time to time, but it's very rare for them to see success. You can make the debate that they are a rogue deck, and with that being said, this being the best card of a rogue deck, that's kind of what I look for in the bronze weapon category. That, and I feel like a lot of people would be mad at me if I didn't talk about this card. No, it's very good centerpiece of Amazonas decks, and yeah, bronze weapon for sure. Not obtainable in any other way either. So then to close out Valiant Souls, we're talking about the poster boy Elemento Hero Plasma Vice. Man's thick, he's got forearms for days, I'll give him that. The Plasma Vice is a level 8 Earth Warrior Elemental Hero fusion monster with 2600 attack. His materials are Elemental Hero Sparkman, a vanilla Elemental Hero, and Elemental Hero Blade Edge, who is level 7. He has this restriction where he can only be fusion summoned and can't be special summoned with other ways, but there is a way to circumvent that I will go over. If he attacks a defense position monster, he pierces, and then he can also discard a card to target an attack position monster your opponent controls and destroy it. That effect is not once per turn. So it's very similar to a pre-errata Bryonic. So obviously the thing with this card is summoning it. However, because of a card named Elemental Hero Grand Merge, he's really not all too bad to summon. The Grand Merge has this effect where if he destroys a monster by battle, you can tribute him to special summon any Elemental Hero Fusion monster, with one restriction to that where it cannot attack monsters with a level equal to or lower than it. So for Plasma Vice, that's like everything in the game. So if you bring him out this way, he basically can't attack, but you could still bring him out to wipe your opponent's field if they control a bunch of attack position monsters, but then his piercing effect is just irrelevant. And so that's kind of the obvious issue with this card. It's hard to bring out, and the one way to get him out pretty easily prevents him from attacking, and then his destruction effect is good, but it's also very specific. Face up attack position monster and it targets, and yeah, you know, it's just, there's a lot of ways to circumvent it. It has no protection. You know, it's just like, it will never see play over some of the other Elemental Hero Fusion monsters. So whatever, it's a fine card, I guess. Compare it to some of the other poster boys I've talked about, but yeah, it's you know, it's one of those lukewarm cards you pull. Like, you see all the animation, oh, I'm getting an ultra rare, it's gonna be Needle Sealing, it's gonna be Canadian, and you see, oh, the man's thick, he's got a great artwork, but I just can't use him. Okay. Well, I've been texted, and my coffee has gone cold again. Right, okay. I don't really want to do this. Great Trunade, Treacherous Trap Hole. So, I have made a 10-minute video. Yeah, click on it, you fucking... dude, even when I'm making a fucking buy the box, it's gotta fuck with my shit. I have made a 10-minute video about how overpowered this card is and how much I hate it. I've trashed it in almost every single video I've made. My channel description is #1 Treacherous Trap Hole Hater. Before the Discord was known as the Eagle Nest, I had a picture of Treacherous Trap Hole getting banned as the Discord server profile picture. So yeah, how I feel about this card is pretty obvious. So I'm just gonna make this extremely quick because, again, I have a 10-minute video talking about this card. In my opinion, it's the second best card in the game right now behind Monster Reborn, and it needs to be banned. It's so strong. It's the most played trap card in the game by far. Despite its limit 2 restriction, it sees play over other limit 2s that would otherwise be prioritized in certain decks. It's stupid, it's dumb, I hate it, and it belongs in Great Trunade because it's that good. Now, something I did say about Great Trunade is it kind of prevents them from adding any value to the box, and that's not the case with Treacherous Trap Hole. On the day that I'm praying for, the day that will convince me that Konami doesn't have it out for me specifically, is when it gets banned. And barring that, I believe Great Trunade is a placement for it. So I don't have anything for the rest of my categories. I really don't. This box is not super great. However, I am gonna kind of do this bundle thing in Bronze Weapon because I don't really know, but I love spellbooks, man. And all the Spellbook cards are in this box. Now granted, there is High Priestess of Prophecy and Spellbook of Wisdom that come later, and they're both ultra rares, unfortunately. The core of a Spellbook deck can totally be found in here. There is Spellbook Magician of Prophecy, who is one of the only main deck monsters they run. When he's normal summoned or flipped face up, you can add any Spellbook spell card from your deck to your hand. He is a phenomenal searcher for the archetype. And then there is Spellbook of Life, which is a super rare equip spell that banishes a spellcaster monster from your graveyard, and then you can reveal another Spellbook spell from your hand, and then you target a spellcaster monster in your graveyard and special summon that target in face-up attack position. This card is then equipped to it, and the equipped monster's level is increased by the level of the monster that was banished for the card's activation, and a hard once per turn. So more situational than the rest, but then there's Spellbook of Secrets, which can add any spellbook from your deck to your hand. Paired alongside Magician of Prophecy, you have really good searchers for the deck. And then you have Spellbook of Power, which can increase attack. You have Spellbook of the Master, which can copy the effect of another spellbook in your graveyard, such as what is probably the best out of all of them in Spellbook of Fate. Spellbook of Fate is a great quick play spell card that actually has 3 effects depending on which one you choose to proc, all based on the amount of Spellbook spell cards that you banish from your graveyard. If it's 1, you return 1 set spell and trap card on the field to the hand. If it's 2, you change a monster on the field into face down defense position or face up attack position. And the best one by far, if you banish 3, you can banish any card your opponent controls. Absolutely no restriction on that. And yeah, they are competent, potentially future-proofed, and some people have a theory. Now, I don't know if I agree with this, but some people say that they didn't ban Treacherous Trap Hole because if they did, then you would be allowed to exchange Treacherous Trap Hole for any of the super rares, which means Spellbook Magician of Prophecy, Spellbook of Life, and Spellbook of Secrets, implying that we will get more Spellbook support soon because there is a fair amount that we don't have, and that Konami didn't want people just cashing in on the archetype for free with Treacherous Trap Hole being banned. Now again, I don't know if I entirely believe that, but it's a fun little theory, and because of that theory, you know, and it really does make you think, like they fidgeted around on the ban list with Spellbook of Fate and Spellbook of the Master. So, and in a lot of ways, by putting Spellbook of the Master to 2 and upping Spellbook of Fate from limited to 2 to 3, they buffed spellbooks. So potentially with more support, they could see play. Again, they are a fine archetype. They have built-in consistency, which is nice. They just have no firepower at all. But I'm gonna bundle all of them here. They all see play alongside of each other. All the spellbook cards that are in here, save for a few of them, like Eternity doesn't see a tremendous amount of play. But you will typically see Library of the Crescent at 1 copy. They're just all fairly good, so I'm gonna bunch them in here. And as far as I know, they are not obtainable in any other way. So then going over the poster boy, I love this artwork. White Knight Dragon. He is a level 8 water dragon type effect monster with 3000 attack. During either player's turn, when a spell or trap card that targets him is activated, you can negate it and destroy it. And then when another face-up monster you control is targeted for an attack, you can send a spell or trap you control to the graveyard to change the attack target to him on 3000 is pretty good. So, I mean, yeah, he's not terrible. He's just way too hard to summon. And he does have some built-in protection, which is pretty nice, but he's really just not worth getting on the field. I mean, you know, he's a Blue Eyes that can, you know, basically change an attack back over to him. Just really not doing a whole lot, and he doesn't really synergize with a whole lot of things, despite being a level 8 dragon type monster, which normally would just inherently make you pair with a lot of things very well. Just too hard to summon, too hard to use, and yeah, just not really. So I mean, yeah, like, okay, so here's the thing about Tretch. Like, it's kind of a meme of like me hating this card, and like I have nothing against anyone that chooses to run this. In fact, I encourage it because the card is so good. Why the hell wouldn't you run it? So I just want to clear that up. Like, I don't want people not running this card because of me. And like, look, I don't run it, not anymore. Like, since I made the video, I just kind of like, you know, made a vow in myself. I don't use grit and I don't run Tretch. But you know, that's just like a personal code of mine just because I hate him. But again, it is more of a meme, like, you know. And so what I'm trying to say is this box, especially during the half-off gem sale, is 100% worth it because this card is so good, and if you can use it while it's still live, then why the hell not? And you can get the beginning of a spellbook deck that you could maybe finish later if Tretch gets banned. You know, it's actually kind of a sweet little hookup at Visions of Ice right now. So I mean, yeah, I do recommend this box. Like, again, I hate it, but I can't deny how good it is. So that's gonna do it for Buy the Box episode 11. I thank you guys for watching. Next time, we're gonna be going over Crusaders Battlegrounds and Clash of Wings. I'm excited for these two as well because we got that cute little